Okay, so now we're talking about the last agency in this course, which is the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So at the state level, there's the State Water Resources Control Board that sets the policies and the regulation for the state of California. But then that is all administered by 9 regional water quality control boards. So maybe, Scott, just talk a little bit about, where are they? Are they spread across? And, if you're in have a certain project, you probably fall within one of these 9.
Yeah, so in Southern California, it's a little different. I think we only have 4 or 5, and they're regionally separated throughout the state. And it makes it a little bit complicated because the regions of all the other resource agencies don't overlap exactly with this resource agency. So you may be dealing with 2 separate regional board regions on a single project. So it gets a little complicated.
Okay, so and let's talk about, I don't even know if you'd call them permits, but there's the 401 certification and then a water discharge requirement. So maybe let's just start with the 401.
So the 401 is specifically tied to the Clean Water Act and is associated with the 404 permit that you get with the Army Corps of Engineers. So basically when you submit your applications, and there's a separate application for the 401, that goes to the regional board, and the Army Corps gets their application. So when the 401 application is reviewed and ultimately submitted, that 401 permit goes to the Army Corps, and that is all adopted into the 404 permit.
So again, you'll confuse 404 and 401 between the two until you kind of do this a bit. But the 404 is the permit that you need from the Army Corps, but they will not issue that unless they have a 401 certification from the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
Correct.
Okay. And this 401, you as the developer will submit the application?
Or your consultant.
I mean, consultant.
But
But
yeah.
I mean, it's not like they're doing a consultation request with U.S.
Correct.
Fish and Wildlife Service.
Yeah, the other resource agencies won't instigate that permit, so that's it's a separate application and fee for the regional board.
So if I'm a land developer and I know I'm submitting an application for the 404 to the Army Corps, I need to submit an application for the 401 certification to the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
Correct. Every time you have a 404, you will require a 401.
Okay. But again, as a land developer, you're responsible for initiating that. You won't count on Army Corps to do it.
Correct.
Okay. So, and then let's talk about the water discharge requirement.
So a waste discharge requirement is just like a 401, only without a 404. So if you have a project that has a isolated drainage feature that conveys flows, but is completely cut off from any downstream navigable water, you no longer have that federal nexus for the Army Corps of Engineers, but you still have the state Regional Water Quality Control Board you have to deal with. So the 401, because that is tied to the 404, it's not called a 401 permit. They have an additional language, they call it the waste discharge requirement. So it's basically just like getting a 401, but it's a little bit different in that you don't have the time constraints of the 404. So the 404 is very regimented and has specific timelines of when the application is submitted, when that is deemed complete, and when the ultimate permit is issued. With the regional board, they don't have a time constraint. So they could take as long as they want to review your permit, and there's no time limit. And then once that's deemed complete, they could take as long as they want to send out your waste discharge requirement. But the key thing to remember is that that requirement has to go to their board to be approved. So there's an extensive amount of time, and every regional board person we talk to says they're very busy and they have a whole pile of these. So get it in early, but you have to realize that that requirement of the 404 is a definite time saver when dealing with the WDR. In fact, on a number of occasions, we were told by the people at the Water Quality Control Board is make sure you have a 404 requirement because you're looking at a very lengthy process.
So just so I want to clarify, because I may have misstated it or I've heard it same words, is it water discharge requirement or waste discharge?
Waste discharge.
Waste
Discharge requirement.
Okay, waste. So, and again, if you don't have need a 404 permit, you don't need a 401 certification, but you're going to need the waste discharge requirement.
Correct.
for your project. So you're going to be going to them regardless.
Yes.
And when you say it takes longer, we talked about this 6 months or something getting through the others. What's typical with?
Right now it's 12 months
Okay.
is kind of the typical requirement for WDRs.
So not to get too much into your final engineering, but your grading plans, and let's talk mainly your grading plan. You're trying to get a grading plan done after you got your project approved so you can start moving dirt. But it sounds to me like right now you wouldn't be able to pull that grading permit for 12 months. Even if the city would issue a grading permit in 6 months, you're still waiting for this permit.
Correct. That's why we always encourage to try to get those permits in as quickly as possible, even though your plans might not be 100% complete, because it could take that long to go through the process.
So if the design's 80%, can you submit?
Yep.
Okay. So for example, and this goes with the others as well, let's say you're in a 12-month process to get your tentative track map approved. Maybe somewhere around 6 months you've got your design pretty much complete. You want to go ahead and submit because you've got the next 6 months of getting your project approved. So maybe you can meet that deadline when you've got the grading permit 6 months after your approval, that you've got that. So a really good point.
Yeah.
So, all right, that's good. I think that clears up those two areas.